Hello and welcome to In the Channel from channelbuzz.ca, bringing news and information to the Canadian IT channel community for the last 16 years. I'm Robert Dutt, editor of channelbuzz.ca and your host for the show. If you were around when SD-WAN was the big disruptive idea in networking, the promise of simplifying branch connectivity, cutting costs, getting smarter about traffic, you probably also remember it didn't quite deliver everything it promised. Not because the technology was bad, but because the underlying network architecture couldn't keep up. You still ended up with complexity, it just moved somewhere else. That problem is essentially the founding insight behind Alkira. The company was built by Amir Khan and Atif Khan, the same team behind Viptela, the startup widely credited with creating the SD-WAN category before Cisco acquired it. What they learned in that experience is that SD-WAN, without a proper global backbone, just creates a different set of headaches. So they started fresh and built what they called NIaaS, Network Infrastructure as a Service, a cloud-native consumption-based approach that abstracts the complexity of multi-cloud connectivity into something you can stand up, as my guest today puts it, with just a username and a password. The timing is not accidental, because what AI demands from a network, elasticity, low latency, the ability to reach distributed workloads almost anywhere instantly, is exactly what legacy infrastructure wasn't built to handle. My guest is Doug Hatton, Director of Global Channels at Alkira. Doug has been in the channel a long time, knows the technology in a way that might genuinely surprise you coming from a channel chief, and has a lot to say about what it all means as a real business opportunity for Canadian VARs and MSPs. Let's get right into it, my chat with Doug Hatton. Doug, thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on today, Robert.
So you were part of the team that kind of built up the SD-WAN market at Viptela back in the day. What did you learn there that told you that the next big thing was going to be NIaaS, and why now?
First off, that's a super question. I felt a bit like a passenger on a car that was racing 1,000 miles an hour when we were doing software-defined wide area networking. So it's a good question. I can tell you that what we learned was without organizing your cloud infrastructure properly, your cloud bill gets ridiculously huge. You could start with that, especially if you keep your control element decoupled from your data plane in the cloud and you just have all of these, sort of workloads churning. So we learned that, but what we really learned, I thought, and that's applicable to what we're now doing in Alkira, is software-defined wide area networking, which is a technology that we do integrate with, and often we'll go into a brownfield environment and, sort of reorganize, re-architect to make it a little bit more optimal, is that, the promises SD-WAN really did deliver. It really does allow our customers, or did allow our customers when we were at Viptela and then at Cisco as SD-WAN, to influence traffic based on the link quality below and, improve the user experience, which was the ultimate goal, right? If you're on a phone call and starts to get goofy and you can move over to a better performing link in real time without dropping the call, that's pretty powerful. And that's the same with the data traffic that was going on as well. What I guess I hadn't thought of as global companies start to adopt SD-WAN and they start to disaggregate because they've got global locations in Southeast Asia and in, wherever in China and in LATAM and all of that stuff, that the latency, back to the control element, isn't necessarily a thing that's easy to contend with. So you ended up with a whole bunch of folks making some decisions and, in fact, creating 4 separate disparate networks, right, for latency purposes. And that was not part of the original premise, strangely. And so I guess what we learned was you need a global backbone that's high throughput, low latency. The edge can still be SD-WAN. There are some really cool, things in SD-WAN that people still want to consume. And depending on what flavor of SD-WAN you buy, you may want to do some WAN op where you're deduping data and caching it. You may want to move traffic, like I previously inferred, over to better performing link in real time. You do like sort of policy-based routing and all the forward error correction and all everything, right? All of that stuff still has a practical application, and the site-to-site communications is still needed in most places, or in some use cases. But Alkira, because we built inside of the cloud first and employed the same principle of decoupling control plane from data planes so that you can scale, and by abstracting the cloud infrastructure, we were able to remediate the latency that those disparate four networks, and the four different geos geographically dispersed, and remediate the latency issue, right? It's just like we're the global backbone, that middle mile that has high throughput, low latency, and then you connect these cluster of SD-WAN networks together, and all of a sudden, the promise of SD-WAN gets a little bit more consumable. People can start to realize it, right? Because you don't have the same sort of latency constraints. You have a singular network that's managed from a singular control plane and an element management and orchestrator, and you can still sort of actuate the niceties of SD-WAN at those local sites.
So in plain language, Canadian MSP or VAR is used to selling network hardware or managing someone else's infrastructure. How is selling, deploying, managing NIaaS different from what they're already doing, and what makes that distinction important?
Okay, so let's take a half step back real quick and talk about what NIaaS is. So it's network infrastructure as a service, right? For your audience, what Alkira does is abstract the cloud infrastructure and build a routed overlay on top of it, and we like to think of it as a virtualized colo that connects and normalizes communications across your entire network. It sets up really for the managed service provider or the service providers themselves. Our solution accelerates bringing their customers to cloud applications and cloud workloads and storage and all the other things that the cloud promise. The way that I would explain it to my mom, I've told this joke once today already because I'm sitting in a partner's office right now, is that if you go to Russia, Japan, Argentina, and, San Francisco all in one day, and you had to transact, pay for a pack of gum or something in each, and you could speak the native language, that would be ideal. So what we really focused on was normalizing the communications, no matter the cloud service provider or the colo provider or the data center being private or public, or the branch office and any type of router at the branch office. So as an MSP or an SP that comes in, what we give to our customers and to our partners who resell as MSP or provide managed services to their customers is a username and a password, right? That username and a password allows you then to come in, and this is for your old school folks in your audience, just get your network together effectively. And you kind of turn a couple of knobs and, it's not like the AMP doesn't go to 11. We just removed all the numbers, you know what I mean? And automated all of the AMP away. It just knows what you want to do. So that includes, it's a routed BGP overlay that has, the brain abstracted from it. And then the forwarding plane, can route around things like the CrowdStrike outage or losing a region in AWS, which happens more frequently than AWS would like to admit, or any of the cloud service providers. The $54 billion pension fund at GCP just disappearing off the rack. I think that sort of triggered this multi-cloud sort of adoption, and certainly accelerated it, but it presented you with a new problem. And that new problem was, hey, I got an AWS guy or lady, but I don't have an Azure, GCP, OCI, Tencent, AliCloud, or name your cloud, right? Those are all different languages. And, I tell this to my mom and she doesn't get that. But when I tell her that we normalize the communications between all the assets in the network and make it really easy to go connect to them, she gets that, right? And so for the managed service provider who wants to monetize new things in their business or looking for another stream of revenue, we offer a couple of cool things. In the middle of our stack, we make a solution that we put inside of the cloud, right? It's sitting in a VPC, a VNet, a VCN, Google VPC, what have you. Okay. And it's sitting in the middle of all the cloud workloads, of all the SaaS workloads, and all of the WAN workloads. We've made hay and pleased a lot of our customers by lowering their total cost of ownership, by consolidating network services that they have in their network already, and in the form of a virtualized network function. So take, for instance, Robert, like a Palo Alto firewall deployment of, let's say you get 50 Palos out there, right? And they're all talking to Panorama. And the security engineer on the ground is actually influencing policy via Panorama. And he's or she is like, they're creating, drop all traffic from this location, blah, blah, blah. So instead of having 50 Palos on the ground, and if you're an MSP, what you could say is, or if you're a customer, or if you're a service provider, if you're any of our partners, you could say, instead of those 50 firewalls, why don't we consolidate those? And the thinking here is this. I'm going to go from the ground, 5 to 10 milliseconds to the nearest public cloud POP. I'm going to hop onto the Alkera fabric, which, you're going to terminate that traffic on a virtual port on our exchange point. And in the middle of the exchange point, that's all sitting in this VPC, VNet, VCN, what have you. I'm going to place a virtualized network function, the Palo virtualized network function. Then I get the IP address of the Panorama server. And if you didn't tell the security engineer that something had changed, he or she would not be aware. The form factor is changing, but not how you're going to interoperate with Panorama or how you're going to build policy or any of the things you're doing to secure through this next generation firewall the traffic that's passing through it. That remains, the task remains the same. What we're able to do is virtualize the instance and put it onto a global high throughput, low latency backbone inside of our exchange point, right? And the exchange point is, we deploy them in HA pairs. They're anywhere from 100 meg to 40 gig. The customer or the service provider consumes one, and we maintain the other on their behalf. And we do that because every 30 days we're fixing bugs and we're doing maintenance and stuff like that. We need to swing the production workloads over to the backup, do the work on the primary, and then do the reverse order. All the while keeping these folks up and running because we're delivering this to our service provider friends, our partners, and our customers as a service, right? So it's got to always be on. And, I think one of the coolest things that we decided to do architecturally at the start was to ensure that we always had those two and that they were active in a full mesh configuration, right? So you've got, these two exchange points that are buttressed by, hundreds of other exchange points globally distributed across the world. And they're all singing the same song and talking to each other and are aware of what each other's dispositions are.
You've said that legacy networks can't handle what AI demands, specifically in terms of elasticity. Can you unpack that a little bit? When an MSP's customer starts deploying language models or agentic workflows, what is it that breaks?
A good question. I'm sure I'm going to give you a half-ass answer, truthfully. We're all starting to play around with the various solutions that are out there. I do. And I've started to fall in love with my man, Claude. And I think he's the coolest thing in the world, right? I can do all sorts of really creative stuff. And I know I'm not his only master. I think he's a bit of a flirt. And I think he goes out to a lot of different places to get knowledgeable about various things and to really try to provide me with the outcome that I've asked him for, right? And I think those other places are where you run into problems. I used to think that, and this has changed a bit, but I used to say that, the three biggest AI providers are GCP, AWS, and Azure, right? And that's still sort of true. And the likes of Anthropic and the other OEMs that make tools like that are, they're distributing workloads everywhere, LLM workloads everywhere. And I think it's like I've said this before, it's like buying a really hot car and driving it down a pothole-filled road, right? What we offer is this high throughput, low latency, elastic network. If you want to turn it up in a heartbeat, you can do that. Like we did the S&P global merger with IHS in about 1/10 of the time that they wanted to because we're natively segmented, and they wanted to combine those two networks. And think about those two networks as they just be big, large language models that AI is trying to access. Well, one, you've got to secure your traffic, right? And two, it needs to be elastic and get anywhere you want to go effectively to get the information that the agent wants to produce the outcome that Doug asked for. So it's my thought, and this is, I think, consistent with some of my colleagues, that the ability to go anywhere on any road that's smooth as glass and the hottest car possible with, your good-looking friend Claude next to you is the best approach. Ours is a network infrastructure solution that is just an abstraction. It's like I hate this term, but I use it anyways. It's called, we have this super cloud that has a forwarding plane that goes everywhere. Your imagination is really the only limitation, I think. And so with respect to elasticity of network, speed to network, and securing where you're going to access what you need to access, even if it's agentic, even if it's going and it's self-directed and stuff like that, is still really a critical element. I said this earlier today, so I'm going to say it again. Networking is not really sexy until it doesn't work, right? Back to the legacy network thing. If I have to get in and route peer and configure with a transit gateway, I'm going to punch myself in the face repeatedly. I just don't want to do it, right? It slows me down. It's not so, I can automate it, absolutely. I can use Terraform to do it. I'm cool with that, right? But I just want it now, right? I want to consume it now. I want to prompt it now. I want to get my outcome now.
You guys have launched Akira Nia, your AI co-pilot for network infrastructure assistant, and an MCP server last year. That's interesting, and it's kind of funny that you're essentially putting AI on top of the infrastructure that's enabling AI. But I guess that's sort of a statement of the times, isn't it? What does that actually do for an MSP's day-to-day operations or a partner's day-to-day operations?
Maybe I have a limited imagination, but I still use it like a utility, right? Nia is great because it allows you access to one, let's just start with the basics. Search through all the documentation in a more organized fashion. We have amazing documentation. There's a lot of it. And when I'm looking for a specific config or some sort of something we've captured in a knowledge base, that can be really useful, that tool. But also it's, just carrying on with the theme of utility. How do I do something, right? If I want to create a microsegment to distribute to a bunch of my business units, or I want to build an isolated L3 routing table and get it to the various business units, and then I want to do billing, and I want to tag each of those segments with a specific billing tag. Now, I know how to do that because I've done it a lot, but a new user may not, right? So you can use the Nia agent to search the documentation, search previous implementation documentation about how that's done and best practices and stuff like that. I think that's real value, but you can also ask it questions like, why is the sun, bright? And it won't return you an answer you expect. So I've done that too. So
let's talk a bit about the Connect Partner Program and the economics of it. The partner profit stack, you have tiered margins, you have quarterly rebates, IDFs, spiffs, Connect Pipeline Fund, whole toolkit. It's stuff that partners have seen before, and it's valuable. What's the math here? What does a Canadian MSP at the premier tier actually walk away with on sort of a typical deal after they've done the work?
Usually about 19 percentage points, right? Maybe a little bit more. Maybe we do on the pre-sale side, when we get into a POC, our premier partners can earn $1,000 spiff. We close about 85% of our POCs, so we find value in that, right? So you count that plus the rebates. They've got access to MDF. So I think the total haul is closer to 20% on each of the deal. We are, and this is worth mentioning, and then we'll kind of circle around to the second half of the question. We are a 100% channel company and have been since May of 22. My partner and I, David Klebanoff, who's my technical counterpart, we work together at Boptello. We started the channel it took us a couple of weeks to convince our CEO that 100% channel was the way to go. I think he's a believer now. We've had an excellent year. We've driven a significant amount of revenue for the Alkira, the company, and our partners are thought leaders, and they're out there talking about our solution with their customers and solving problems more easily than they ever have before. I'm in Chicago, and I had a big partner thing yesterday, technical sort of enablement session with 30 some odd SAs and SEs. And, we had the same SD-WAN question, and we had all these questions about segmentation and about M&A. And, if you get into there's all this consolidation going on in insurance and in healthcare and all this stuff. And how do you deal with the overlapping IP space, right? This is something that MSPs face all the time, especially, all the service providers not the service providers so much, but the managed service providers absolutely face, this sort of overlapping IP address. And that's kind of a tricky thing. We've entirely simplified that, right? You just build a NAT policy, right, in the solution, and you've got the overlapping IP issue addressed within an hour, right? So you, like in the case of S&P and IHS, they thought their merger was going to take a couple of years. And it was largely because we were able to, IHS can't talk to the HR application at S&P, and S&P can't talk to the HR and plus these other applications over here. And that's a sort of very simple policy. But before you even get there, you need to remediate the overlapping IP address issue, right? You have to have a fast way to do that so you can really get to the meat of what you're trying to deliver to your internal or external customers. And so we thought, and that's been a design element of our solution since the very start. You take care of the small things, and then people can move at a faster rate and get to market faster. Our biggest MSP, and this is a publicly referenceable customer, is CETA. And CETA is a French-based organization. They provide managed network service to 95% of the global airlines worldwide. What it means to them is being able to, today, turn up a new customer to provide and connect the assets from the on-prem side to the control elements so they can begin the process of actually managing that network, right? So it's speed and the efficiencies that are generated from speed and the cost reduction that's generated from that optimizing that transaction. CETA's in the business of providing managed network service, and they've got their margin right, and getting them and those airlines connected as fast as possible makes them more profitable sooner, right? I think that's what it does for all MSPs. If I can, like I said earlier, in my earlier example of consolidating the firewall services to you're going to make a good commission. We're going to support you with MDF. We're going to provide you with quarterly rebates, and then we're going to spiff you when you engage us, and we get collaboratively engaged with our partners in a POC. All of that happens at an accelerated rate with us, right? Look, I've been screaming from the mountaintop about our solution for about 4 years. And then invariably you walk into some place and you're like, hi, my name is Doug Houghton. I'm from Alkira. And they're like, who? I'm like, Doug Houghton. They're like, no, where are you from? And that's starting to happen less, which is a really nice thing. We do, over the last 12 to 24 months, we've seen our business grow exponentially. And the diversity in partners that have joined us has increased, and the margins for those partners have remained very healthy. And the additional, the narrowing of introducing the tiers was to effectively celebrate those partners who've invested in us, right? If I'm looking at the total sort of economic picture, I want my boss to come to me at some point and say, stop incentivizing your partners, because then I know that I will have reached sort of the apex of success, right? Like we'll hit some sort of magical paradigm that where, our partners are generating so much revenue and I'm paying them so much dough that somebody gets uncomfortable. It'll be great. I can't wait for that day. But in the meantime, I'm going to continue to do the promise. There's some really interesting things in the partner program that I'd like to highlight. And it comes with the Dummkopf cap, the sort of the dunce cap that I wear regularly. It's great in never pretending to be the smartest guy in the room and just listening more. So I asked the team how we would build this. I went around and talked to a bunch of partners about their ideal partner programs out there. And we'd had a very sort of relaxed, open arms policy for the longest of times as we built our, because when you're starting in a new channel and disruptive technology, you don't really know who your partners are going to be. We had a pretty good sense that the networking partners were going to be the strongest, and they in fact turned out to be the strongest. But we're talking about a Venn diagram with cloud and security and networking, but there's no cloud security networking guy, right? And there's no cloud security networking partner, or there wasn't. So all of those things are starting to converge. The cloud networking, and the cloud security networking are all converging into sort of not a new domain, but a reiterated domain, right? So I started to ask around, I gather all this data, and we built the program. And one of the realizations that we had that I thought was pretty cool was, what are we doing on the post-sale side? How are we helping? Because we white glove we're still small enough where we white glove every implementation, because it's so important for us and we haven't lost a customer. So important for us to retain customers and be, that the best partner that we can be in the transaction. That doesn't scale, and we're getting to a point. And so I started thinking on that. I'm like, well, why don't, we help our partners productize the post-sales stuff. And so we built a product catalog, and, we've got a calculator and all of this. These are all the things I've done in Claude, by the way. And, new partner portal that we're about to release and stuff like that, that'll have its own AI agent that you can go search and find go-to-market assets and all this kind of cool stuff. But the product catalog was sort of a light bulb moment. I'm like, we pay healthy margins on the pre-sale side at every tier of our partnership program, Healthcare Connect. We don't touch or hadn't touched anything on the post-sale side. Now, we're largely automated, and we do make network infrastructure as a service as simple as possible to consume. It's a username and a password, and it doesn't, my 13-year-old can configure a network. She's really smart, don't get me wrong. I don't know whose kid she is, but we focused on easy, but there's still some implementation work to be done. You still need to build the policies of Panorama. You still need to do the DDI work. You still need to, there's still a little bit of services work that our partners can benefit from. And all of the partners that we have, MSP, VAR, master agents, sub agents, and, and service providers, they all have a post-sales commissionable, objective. And helping them, I thought, was a good idea with that, right? And it helps us scale.
You talk about services. You got some services attach plays as well.
Yeah.
Around modernization assessments, segmentation design, migration sprints, high margin services that you want partners building and that partners want to be building themselves.
Right.
Starting from zero, how long does it realistically take a partner to kind of get the first deal with those services attached through the door? And what does the ramp look like to getting those services up and running and kind of a repeatable and comfortable practice?
There's a lot in there in that question. So let's, again, if you'll indulge me, let's take a half step back. So we've got all sorts of virtual training, right? We've got sales and go-to-market training, 3 modules for that. And then we have 5 or 6 technical training modules that people consume. That we have a lab in the box sort of play. We've got China as a service, because we get into China. We've got foundational technical training. We've got an advanced training. We've got DDI training. So people typically, our partners start there. Then we do a series of in-person and or virtual, sort of like one partner I've got is regular office hours with, and David and I sit in the office hours, or our other architect, Christopher Arenas, sits in the office hours, and we just invite our partners to come and ask questions. This is the most important thing we do, is get our partners comfortable with our technology, because nobody goes out and sells anything unless they know or are confident they can message how Alcura will solve their problem. So this is our, sort of our biggest priority and what I'm doing in Chicago today, with a couple of partners. Okay. So the average sales cycle for now, Kira, our customers are fairly large. They're, we got our first Fortune 10. The more complex a network usually translates to large global deployments across multiple countries and multiple technologies, multiple SD-WAN vendors, multiple firewalls, multiple DDI providers, multiple load balancers, multiple service providers providing connectivity to them, multiple colos, all of this. And that's a great use case for us. We come in and just sit right on top of that. The average sales cycle, like I said, is about 190 days, a little bit longer than 6 months. And, the first deal, the partner gets enabled. They may run into an M&A overlapping IP address, like we were talking about earlier, use case. And they go in there and they've got a good handle on it. They recognize the problem. They've heard and listened for the triggers within the customer and or, whomever the customer is. And they say, I think we can solve this without Kira. Then we go through a POC, and then that POC, typically we're in the POC and the partner is in the POC. It's a little different with the managed service providers, but we'll get to that in a second. And then the customer commits and, that our first small sale inside of that customer happens in 190 days. It's actually 190 and a half days if you want to know the truth. I just looked last week. Okay, so the average sales price on those deals is about, $500K US. And we see significant expansion in the first 12 months, as much as 4x typically. And then we do about 8x in the second 12 months, right? So there's incentive for partners to stick it out. And we're very loyal. If the customer doesn't kick the partner out, we're going to bat with that partner, every single deal. So we get the land transaction and then we go to expand and we work it with the same partner and then it expands again. Like BNSF, one of our public references as well, they've expanded, several times, just to acquire, to satisfy more use cases, more problems. The solution gets really sticky and people see how easy it is. And they're like, I can't believe how easy it is. And they tell a story about my 13-year-old being able to configure a network and then gets a laugh, et cetera, right? Okay, so then you get to the post-sales side, and we come in and typically help implement all of that. And, now we've got partners who are more capable and can, after coming up to speed, receiving all the enablement, now are getting to the point where not only can they sell it, but they can support it as well. In fact, funny story, all of our partners have access to our Slack channel. And one of our partners is working on one of those Fortune 10s that I mentioned. And he, inside of the Slack channel, has this really great habit, and I need to tell him this, of putting a header into the Slack subject and then starting the conversation with us. And he's accessing all of our partners have access to all of our solutions architects and SEs. And they use Slack sometimes to communicate like this fellow did. So I mean, this is, he's been working on services at this customer now for 3 or 4 months. It's a significant engagement. Originally, the partner positioned this network as a quote unquote spaghetti mess, which I still kind of chuckle at. I'm like, awesome. And so he puts these headers in Slack. I grab all those headers and I build my product catalog straight off that. And then I socialize it with a bunch of partners and everybody gives me the sort of the input. And we build our product catalog to help our partners monetize it. But back to the question. You got to sell the deal, right? Even that little M&A use case. And then you go through that POC process. Let's say it's a new partner. They've done the enablement, but this is their first transaction. We're probably going to sit and ride shotgun with them as they deliver the implementation services post-sales, right? At least the first couple of times. And then they'll get their, we're building our badge right now, but they'll get an Alkira post-sales certification as well. So I think you got to get through the first deal and then, just to try to answer your question, those folks learn how we implement the service we deliver, how they can monetize it. And we sit there and kind of ride shotgun with them and help them do all of this. We do it virtually in Slack, or we do it in person in the office, or wherever they need us to do. Again, it's about, I have no illusions that we're going to be anytime soon, go back to being a direct company like we were prior to May of 22. This is, ride or die, right? We're 100% channel, and we will enable our partners to use our solution to solve their customer problems and support them while they do it, because that's been the biggest growth engine at Alkira, our partners.
You have a goal of doubling revenue through partners. What does the ecosystem look like when you get there? Especially because you're talking large customers, very complex environments. This kind of sounds like the sweet spot. Primarily a GSI or large integrator play, or you genuinely see a path for sort of the mid-market MSP or VAR to build a meaningful NIAS practice, especially over time?
That's another tough question. Thank you, Robert. It's so good. Okay. Yes. I do have GSIs that are partners. We have a fairly robust and diverse partner ecosystem. And we see small shops rising up and larger shops, staying fairly static. It's all about, we're still in that, let's say, the brand awareness honeymoon period, right? Where people are realizing our stuff is really cool. They're in the process of getting themselves enabled, but we still have some fairly large partners that we've just brought on, right? So even the largest of large partners in this country or globally aren't as capable as they could be yet. But we're working diligently to fix that. Some of our smaller partners, I'm thinking of a friend of mine in Utah who is just an absolute champion of ours. He just knows our stuff better than most. He's fantastic. He just ripped off 6 or 7 deals a year ago or whatever, and was able to support the implementation, do it all by himself, because he is who he is, and he's curious and he's motivated, and he read all the documentation, and he's been on implementations with us, and he's been through pre-sale cycles, etc. I think we're at different places with different partners in terms of their maturity. And I think, we've got about 150 partners globally. We've got them now segmented into different categories based on the revenue that they've brought to us and the level of investment that they've made in us and our solution, and vice versa as well. It's a tricky question to answer because, like I said, my friend John in Utah is just about as good as they come, and he works at a 10-person shop, right?
Right.
They just happen to have really good customers, and he knows our solution really well. And then you've got large national partners who are getting really well equipped, who are, also are dedicating more personnel resources to us as they see more customer problems that we can solve, and they're quick wins, right? I mean, in the networking space, the 6-month sales cycle is about as fast as it gets, man, right? Because it's just, I'm giving you a username and a password, and you coming in and, making it work and connecting all of their assets together. So it's a tricky question to answer. I hope that I did better than half-assed job to get it done. Yeah.
I think you did.
Thank you, sir.
You guys have called out Canada in your expansion plans alongside the UK, EU, Middle East. What do things look like here operationally in terms of, localized support, channel team here, those sorts of things? Or to your point of, every partner gets the Slack access. Is it sort of a global platform available to Canadian partners kind of approach?
So let's talk personnel. So we have a dedicated rep in Eastern Canada. It's based in New Hampshire. And we've got brilliant solutions architect sitting in the middle of Toronto, or just outside the city. We've got a channel account manager, a very capable teammate of mine, Savannah Stone. And you've got the entire solution architecture staff on call. We just closed a very big logo up there, a large insurance company. And our publicly referenceable customer up there is a Contact 360. It's a contact center, a BPO play. They wanted to connect and there's a video about this on our website. They wanted to connect LATAM back up to Canada, and they just couldn't figure out an effective way to do that without us. And so we have them hop through US West 1 on the way to, or maybe they go through the middle of the country. I can't recall. So don't hold me to that. And so we put a stake in the ground. We added CDW up there. I've got a value-added distributor that I work with that helps with field events, plus the resources that we have. Not robust by any means. It's kind of like you don't build it and they'll come, they have to come, and then we build it kind of play. But there's a tremendous amount of opportunity in both Canada and LATAM that I'm really excited about. And so nobody's told me no yet with respect to spending budget. So there goes Doug, right? At some point, somebody will come and say something like, no. But right now we're building a business, and we see the proceeds. We had an excellent, it was so nice. A really nice man named Chris Delasinos, who's an architect and consultant, and he works with other architects and consultants in our space. He's a member at a wine shop, and it was during the Toronto International Film Festival last year. Mm-hmm. And we had this fantastic wine event, right? And, those things are, I don't drink alcohol. So it's kind of like, okay, whatever. I'm not going to get loaded and talk and have funny conversations with people. But I had the best time. Like, we had all of these huge customers come to this wine event right next to TIFF that was going on. And it seemed that the demand for the simplicity, the ease of implementation, and all the things that we do really well was just as needed in Canada as it was in the US or LATAM or Europe. And so we see this as a sort of a global solution. We talk about global backbone as a service all the time, right? It's when you abstract the infrastructure from the public cloud service providers, it's all effectively high throughput, low latency stuff, right? And we're connecting China to San Francisco, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to pay a distance and time tax, but it's really easy to set up and get configured. And if you don't like the geopolitical winds, which is, I think, a fairly common thing for most people, getting in and out of China may be something you absolutely have to do because you're trying to get GPUs or I don't know, whatever, right? But you can't go spend millions, if not billions of dollars on infrastructure in China anymore. You need a better way to connect in as a service. We're just abstracting the Azure mainland and the AWS mainland instances, and then they operate the same way that the AWS and Azure instances do in the States or in Canada, right? So our exchange point goes into the VPC or the VNet there, and we just bring an IPsec, a direct connect, express route, or whatever, and connect those people back. And when you can consume it as pay as you go, you can do all you can eat, you can do a committed term. But if you do pay as you go, you stop using it, you stop paying for it. So I think the solution sets up well for managed service providers who want to grow their business into different regions and, different parts of the world.
So my last question then, for that Canadian MSP who's listening to this and thinking, this sounds like an interesting opportunity for me. What's the one thing you'd want them to take away and more importantly, to act on?
Right. I would ask them to go to partners, plural, at alkira.com and just shoot us a note. And then I will just ply them with all sorts of crazy content, videos and learnings and, a deal reg portal and this information about the spiffs and how to get them and all of that stuff. I'd say that sort of tongue in cheek and sort of not. Partners at alkira.com. But if you are looking to grow your business as a managed service provider, be it managed network or managed security, managed load balancing, managed DDI, managed connectivity, we're a really great place to start because it's never unpopular to go into somebody and solve a problem really quickly and say, you know what? I can help you with X, Y, and Z as well, and I can do it in the next couple of hours. And that's going to drive a total cost of ownership savings of 40 to 70%. Nobody ever kicks you out of the office when you say stuff like that.
Amazing that.
Yeah, right.
Doug, I appreciate your taking the time. Thank you very much.
Robert, thank you for the engaging conversation, and I hope your listeners get some good stuff out of it.
There you have it, Doug Hatton from Alkira. I'd like to thank Doug for his time and for honestly being one of the more entertaining guests I've had in a while. Networking is not sexy until it doesn't work, is one I'm going to be thinking about for a while. Thank you for listening as well. If this conversation sparked something, whether it's curiosity about NIAS, the AI infrastructure angle, or what roughly 20% total margin on a $500,000 average deal could do to your business, Doug made it easy for you to take the next step. Drop a note to partners@alkira.com. That's the front door, and for what I heard today, they will absolutely get back to you. Here's the thing that stuck with me most in this conversation. The argument that the AI moment isn't just a software or services play. It's going to force a reckoning with network infrastructure that a lot of organizations have been deferring for years. The partners who treat that reckoning as an opportunity rather than a fire drill are probably going to look very smart in about 3 years. If you're finding the channelbuzz.ca podcast useful, the best thing you can do is follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, most major directories. And if you're enjoying the show, ratings and reviews are genuinely appreciated. They help people in the channel find us. Until next time, I'm Robert Dutt for channelbuzz.ca, and I'll see you in the channel.